so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Testa. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to be your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. So today we want to get you fired up about a children's book. We should be fired up about the little people that are in our lives to do what? Enlighten them, inspire them, and empower them to grow up to be the best citizens that they can be. And I love having authors on my show. So I combined two really great things today. Well, my guest is author Margo Smith, and she has written the book, The Perfect Shade of Pink. I love it. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, she graduated from the University of Kentucky with her master's degree in speech-language pathology. She and her husband have lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and they have been married for over 31 years. Of course, they have children, and I'm going to ask her a lot more, not only about her personal life, but about being a speech-language pathologist. That is really, really awesome, and I love that she is helping children. So you know what I'm going to say. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Margo. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Good morning, Dr. Angela.
I am so interested in the fact that you chose to go into the field of speech-language pathology. Can you tell us a little bit more about what directed you to go into that field?
Well, I was in college, and I needed a major, and I knew that I'd always wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And I needed a major, and I'd had 6 different majors. And I was actually working on a work-study program for the Dean of Men, and he told me I needed to take an aptitude test. So I did that. Came back, the results said that I should be a speech-language pathologist.
Wow.
I decided to do that. I looked it up, didn't know a lot about it, and I thought it would be a good fit for me. Mm-hmm. So that's how I decided to become a speech-language pathologist.
I love it. Now, if I understand correctly, you have worked in the public schools, you have worked in home health, as well as in private practice. Do you have a preference when it comes to the type of environment in which you're able to share your talent? Does it matter to you, or are they all equally as rewarding and challenging?
Well, I did start out in the public schools. I worked in eastern Kentucky, and that was a very good experience for me, and I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. And then I did find my niche eventually, and my practice niche is written language disorders, and I love working with kids that do not know how to write, because writing is so important in our society today. So that's really my specialty, and I had a private practice with 2 other ladies, and we specialized in teaching children how to write.
I love it. Speaking of writing, you have now added author to your list of things that you do. Can you tell us a little bit more about your children's book, The Perfect Shade of Pink?
Well, The Perfect Shade of Pink, it was my first book, and it is based on the parable in the Bible, the lost son or the prodigal son, out of Luke 15. And I wrote it for many reasons. I've always wanted to write books. I love reading, and I just have a passion that children should learn how to read. But also, as a young girl growing up in a church, sometimes I didn't always understand the parables. And so I just decided to take the parable and translate it into modern times, and I wanted to make it fun. So I chose pink flamingos. So Ed is one of the pink flamingos and his brother Sam, and they're the two, just like in the Lost Son. Mm-hmm. And pink flamingos are fun. Children love them.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. That is so true. It's almost like, I don't know if they're drawn to them because they're pink or because they're kind of a big bird. I'm not sure, but that is true. Children do love flamingos. That is so awesome. Now, when you finally decided that it was time to write the book, did you find that you would have this book kind of in your heart all along, or was it more so you kind of woke up one day and said, you know what, this is exactly what I need to do, and I'm going to seize the moment right now?
I knew that I always wanted to write a children's book. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it for me was fear, and I think that God had to really say to me, you know what, I've given you these talents, and you need to use them. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways he did that for me was in my book, I dedicated it to some women, and two of those women one of them was Mercedes Brown, and then Kimberly Ball Rideout. And they both got pancreatic cancer at the same time. Mm-hmm. And Mercedes Brown, she was my neighbor, and she was just the most encouraging woman. She was a great Christian lady, but she just was so encouraging. Mm-hmm. And then my cousin, Kim, also got pancreatic cancer. And as you know, you don't usually live from that, and neither one of these women lived. But at that time, that all happened at the same time, and I just realized, oh, life is short. Here's my cousin who was younger than I was, and she died. Yeah. And I just felt like, God was saying to me, you cannot waste your talents and your gifts because you don't know what today or tomorrow is going to bring.
So true. And I'm so glad that you chose to listen to that prompting, that you remembered that, and out of something that could be painful. And death is never a happy thing, and we definitely miss our loved ones, though we know that they've gone on to be with the Lord. What a beautiful way by dedicating that to them, to keep them in our forever memories. I really like that you did that. Now, reading is so important, and we know that as parents we need to do certain things with our children, and in my humble opinion, reading to them is one of the things that we need to do. Now, why do you think it's important for parents to read to young children?
Well, not only does it help them educational, in their education, but also I think it's a special bonding time. Mm-hmm. I have a really good friend that she read to her children all the way up into high school. And they're young adults now, and they have great memories of that. And when they were in middle school, they would ask her to read to them, but they would always say to her, Mom, you can't tell anybody we do this.
Right.
So, I just think it's a bonding time. It's just something that creates a bond between children, and it just, it is the best way for them to learn to read.
Absolutely. My mother, shout out to my mom, did a really great thing when I was in elementary school. She would read the books, and she determined that every character needed a different voice. So she read the stories to me in the voice that she thought was appropriate for each character. And it really had an effect on me because I love to read. And because of what she did, I have a love of reading, which I in turn passed on to my children. And now, how some people read a book, really? I don't know. It's, what book are you reading? It becomes a part of your conversation, and there's certain people that you can just go to and say, I need a really good book. What do you suggest? So it really and truly can make a difference. Now, I know that we talked about kind of the theme of the book, And in a previous answer, you said that it's kind of related to the prodigal son. But for someone who may not be a Christian, would they still be able, with the theme of your book, would they still be able to understand the overall message, or is this geared more towards a Christian audience?
Well, I purposely, in my book, did not mention God in the book. Mm-hmm. And I did that for a reason, because I wanted to get into the public schools. And I've been able to get into the public schools, so that's been a huge blessing. But as I've read my book to the public school children, they can all relate. I mean, they can relate to Ed. He's the he's the son that runs away from home, and he makes bad choices. And so they can relate to that. And then, Sam, he's the good son that stays at home, and he gets angry when his brother returns home. So they can relate. And it was interesting, Dr. Angela, the very first time I had gotten my book as a brand new author, I was so excited. And I got my neighbor's granddaughter, and I read her the book. And it doesn't talk about jealousy. We got done with the book, and she looked at me, and she said, she was 6 years old at the time. She looked at me and said, "I'm jealous of my sister." Oh. And, so kids get it. They get, those themes of jealousy and anger. And, when I go into the public schools and read, I'll have kids raising my hand. My brother did that, and they, kids are so open. They want to tell you their life story. So they get it. And so, it's a book that is written for all children, and it has a moral, a parable. It, involves a character who faces a moral dilemma, and the character usually makes a bad decision and then suffers the consequences. Kids get those things.
I don't think that we always give them enough credit. We think that just because they're children, that their minds aren't working at optimal capacity, that they're just kind of going through life on autopilot, but they really and truly are getting it. You are definitely correct in that one. Well, it is almost time for us to go to break, Margo, but I want for everyone to, of course, get a copy of your book. So if you could please, can you remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy of it? And how do we follow you online?
Okay, my book is called The Perfect Shade of Pink by author Margo Smith. You can follow me online at www.margosmithauthor.com. And my book is available at barnesandnoble.com and Amazon.
All righty, listeners, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is author Margo Smith, and she has written the book, The Perfect Shade of Pink. It's a children's book, and I really think that you and your little ones will enjoy it. So, Margo, I have to ask, why or how does Ed, who's a pink flamingo, turn green?
Well, Dr. Angela, that's one of the best things about the book. He turns green because he goes and lives with the green pigs. And the green pigs, as you may have read in my book, they eat green things. So he eats green things and he turns green. But I think that's bigger symbolism for us, I was thinking, I have adult daughters now, and they're dating, and we've often talked about missionary dating, and I would prefer that my children marry Christian men. But as sometimes we think that we might want to date somebody that's not a Christian, and we're going to change them, and we're going to lead them to Christ. But what happens? We turn green. Instead of them helping us, we go down that path, and that's what happened to Ed.
Wow, I Love the symbolism there. So no matter who's reading the book, the message can relate to anyone at any level. I love that because I'm thinking about perhaps the teenage brother or sister that's reading to their little brother or sister, and even they're able to get it. So that I love it. I love that you did that. Now, so many times we have an idea that we feel that we're supposed to put out there in the world in the form of a book. And we hope and pray that everyone understands that what we're trying to put out. But I know that you have gotten some feedback, so I have to ask, what are the children saying? What are the parents saying? Why do they love your book?
Well, I think, and I've gone out and I've done book events for Barnes & Nobles and gone into the public schools and read. And the feedback that I've gotten from parents is they like the fact that it's well written, that it has a moral dilemma, and it has a message that's a good message. If you look at some of the literature that's out there, some of it is just not always has a great message. So I think parents really appreciate that. And then children, the younger children love the colors. You know, they love the fact that the flamingo turns green. They love the fact that his brother turns red. And then they turn back to pink. So they love that. But older children, I have had like 12-year-olds write me letters. And I would not think that a 12-year-old would like this book, but they do because of the message. And it helps them realize that they can be themselves. And that God accepts us as we are.
And that in itself is such a powerful message. And I love that you added the fact that they turned color, that there was the visual representation of their mood change, of their emotion, of what they were going through spiritually, if you will. I just think that is such a great touch because someone else may have missed it. You know, for that person that is very much a visual learner and needed to see that change to make the correlation of the journey. I think that was just a great added touch there. Now,
and you know, from the spiritual perspective, we're all one of these brothers. You know, we're either Ed, who is the lost son who's running away from something, or we're either the good brother that stayed home and maybe we're angry and bitter and resentful. You know, we're one of these brothers. And, you know, I think it's very important for children to see that. And we may not be that brother all the time. We can change it back and forth.
Absolutely. And I think that if we're honest with ourselves, there should not be one adult who can't raise his or her hand that says, have you ever experienced this? And it's like, of course. It may not be, you know, on a level 10, but it could be on a level 2 where you felt a certain something towards someone for a moment or two, and you had to kind of, you know, reflect on that and get back in a good place with them. So exactly, I think that you're really right on that one. Now, be it that you were able to read the books in public schools, and I think one thing across the board in public schools is that there's always the concern that you don't offend, that everyone is considered when introducing new topics, new ideas. With the teachers that were going to read your book in public schools, did you have any pushback from any of the teachers, or were they able to see kind of the lesson that was trying to be taught, and they were all gang-ho? What happened there?
Well, once I got into the public schools, and in Jefferson County, the county that we live in, my book had to be reviewed by the committee, so it was reviewed and accepted. But prior to that, when I would be at book events and teachers would come up to me and talk to me, I heard a lot of, well, I really like your book, but, you know, it's a little too spiritual for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so my answer, I had thought about this, and my answer would be, well, wait a minute. I do not mention God in this book.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. Now, once my book was approved, I've not had any pushback because, they're like, okay, you're approved, you're good to go.
And, it was probably just their understanding because being an adult, they were able to pull from the story that was the inspiration, and they were able to see it. But as a child, if that child isn't familiar with that story, they're just going to accept it as the beautiful moral that you're trying to teach, and not necessarily, oh yeah, we learned about this in Sunday school class. So I'm glad that they were able, that the school board was able to kind of zoom out and see the broader message as well. That's awesome. Now, you have recently written a second book, The Lost Bone and Found Sister. What is that book about?
Well, this book is loosely based on the parable, also the lost coin. And I did not include that in the beginning of my book because I had to take a lot of literary license. Because if you go back to Luke and you read the parable of the lost coin, there's not a lot of information there. But it is based on that parable, and it is about losing things that we think are important. Mm-hmm. And then we find out what we lost really wasn't important. And I've told that story through two cute little dogs. Mm-hmm. And their conflict about losing a bone that one of them thinks is important, but it's really not. And then in the end, finding out the true meaning that family and friends are more important than possessions.
Mm-hmm. 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 What a great, great concept. Now, did you find that as you were writing with either of the books, when you were writing, did you find that the title came to you first, or did the title kind of come out of your writings? At what point in the process did you say, hey, here's the title?
Well, I'm one of these authors that, there are some authors that write every day. I just cannot do that. So I just get inspired, and I sit down, and it just comes out. Okay. So on both of my books, I did not have a title till the end.
Oh, okay. Now, did you have a working title while you were writing, just something that you kind of named it, or was it kind of like book one? How did you kind of keep yourself inspired to keep writing?
Well, the first book was called the Pink Book because of the pink flamingos. Mm-hmm. The second book was because of the parable. It was called The Lost Bone. But then so on that book, I guess I did have a title, and maybe I didn't realize it. But then on the second book, I added "and the Found Sister," and that came later. Mm-hmm. But the first book was just the Pink Book, and then I thought about the brother, and he wanted to be perfect, and I'm like, oh, the perfect shade of pink. Yeah.
I love it. It's funny how stuff kind of just comes to us, and then it's like, oh, thanks, Holy Spirit, for giving me that epiphany, and it ends up being just the perfect title. Now, for many authors, they have a desire to write X amount of books, be it that it's a series or they simply want to have 7 books or 10 books or 4 books, or for that matter. Do you have any plans to write any future children's books?
Well, currently I have written one with my co-author. She's her name is Ellen Vinhoff, and we just finished this book. It's at the publisher, so we're hoping it's going to be coming out really soon. And it is about a little boy named Jacob and his relationship with his grandfather. And how we've kind of woven that in talking about bridges. And we use the symbolism of bridges, bridging people together.
That should be really interesting. And I think that with bridging people together, man, that is such an opportunity for so many parents to have conversations with their kids. You know, thinking about maybe a classmate that they're upset with, or maybe someone at church that they're upset with, or even a brother or sister or other family member that they may be having a tough time going through. But on the flip side, boy, is that going to remind the adult or the teenager or older kid that's reading it as well that we need to, bridge together. That's awesome. I love that concept. Great job, you guys. You're really writing some good stuff here, Margo. Good job.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And
yeah, we really need to have more positivity that we're reminding our children as they're growing of not only our values from our faith perspective, but just to be really good people out here in a world that's kind of, it has a lot, there's a lot that we're throwing at our kids nowadays. So thank you so much for giving them that really great foundation. Well, it is almost time for us to go, but I wanted to ask you, before we leave, I'd like to ask my authors if they can share a bit of wit and wisdom, if you will, for someone who may be thinking about becoming an author, or they need to kind of get unstuck with where they are right now. Is there any bit of wisdom or encouragement that you could share with them today?
Well, I think for me, I was stuck in fear, and I think all of us have fears, and it was really for me working out with a very, very dear friend who's a counselor. We really worked out my fears about why I was afraid to write. And I think, we need to turn that over to God. And I remember when we talked about all of this, and she prayed over me, and that was very special to have somebody pray over me. And it was like she gave me a blessing over my books. And so I think, find someone, that a mentor or a counselor or a friend, and talk to them about why you're stuck. What's keeping you from using your talents and gifts. And ask the people to pray for you. Sometimes prayer is so overlooked, Dr. Angela, and we don't really appreciate the value of prayer. But I know that when she prayed over me, that opened the door for me. It was a supernatural thing, but it opened the door for me to go forward and not be afraid. I just think it's so awesome when someone is able to recognize that's the missing part, that it's really great, be it that they're a professional or a friend or a family member, because we can read all the memes in the world, we can find all of the inspirational quotes, sometimes we can even pray by ourselves, but when we have that other person there that says that they want to stand in agreement with us, that they want to be that intercessor, or they just want to, take it to God and say, hey, this is my sister, this is my friend, this is someone that I know, and Lord, intercede and do what needs to be done. That is so powerful, and I'm so glad that she recognized that and that she was able to do that with you, because we need to have more people willing to stand up and do that. So that is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Margo Smith, I have enjoyed my time with you today, and I think that our listening audience has enjoyed the show as well. So before you go, if you could please, one last time, remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we pick up a copy, and how do we follow you? My first book is The Perfect Shade of Pink, and my second book is The Lost Bone and the Found Sister. You can follow me at www.margosmithauthor.com. And you can find my books at barnesandnoble.com and on Amazon.
All righty. Thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in as well. And as always, may you continue to find God's grace and mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.